Well, what's up, everyone? Again, it keeps doing this. Why does it keep stopping my music? It's really annoying. I gotta adjust my light here because it's making my camera look funky. Well, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another stream. So glad that you joined us. Well, today is a new mini. We finished the Pirate Lady at the end of last week. So kind of time to dive into something a little bit different. So today we are actually going to be painting something for my Warhammer army, which ironically enough, I'm not even sure I'm going to use in my army, but we'll figure it out. So today we're going to be painting what's known as an Apothecary, essentially a field medic. These guys kind of have a really bizarre, I guess you could say, there we go, kind of, not history is the wrong word, but like, you would think that somebody named an Apothecary would be all about saving people and saving lives, but not these guys. These guys basically, once somebody is beyond saving, or what they consider beyond saving, they harvest what's known as a gene seed, and essentially to make more Space Marines. So it's kind of gruesome, but it's kind of cool at the same time. In game, they're very valuable, especially if you have units with plasma-based weapons, because you can overcharge plasma-based weapons. That can end up, if you roll, I think it's a 1. No, I think it's 1. If you roll a 1 on a hit roll, you will take a mortal wound. And you pair an Apothecary with those units, and it can save that mortal wound and prevent it from happening. What's up, Calico? So, without further ado, here he is. So he's kind of a smaller model than we've had before, but I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. So unlike what I normally do, I didn't do a zenithal highlight on this guy, and there's a very specific reason. So this may look white on stream, but it's actually a very light gray. And essentially I've got kind of my source material here. This is what he's gonna look like. So he's gonna have this white armor, but kind of like what we've talked about before, you can't really highlight white. So you start with a light gray is where you want to start with. So I base coated him in Vallejo gray. So without further ado, let's get started. His drapery, I guess you could say, or his talbert is going to be a blood red color. He's going to have one shoulder pad blue, because I do run an Ultramarines army. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, I'm going to use some violet red. We're actually going to mix this with a little bit of dark gray to get our... Do I use a brush or just dunk it? Oh, you're talking about in like the for priming it? So for priming, I actually use my airbrush. I have an airbrush system in the other like part of my apartment. So no, I just use an airbrush. Probably one of the best purchases I've ever made for the miniature painting hobby was my airbrush, because you can get primer that's in like spray paint cans, but they get expensive after a while, and airbrush really helps with that. So right off the bat, we're gonna go ahead and start with this kind of gray red, and we're gonna go ahead and start. This could be our shade color, so we're gonna go ahead and start with the cape here. Yeah, it is, and I've also done some airbrush work on larger scale minis as well. So like I did a statuette a while back, and most of it was done via airbrush. I've done a couple busts with just airbrush work. Well, I say just airbrush work. The vast majority of it was airbrush work, and then I did a little bit like more the really small details using a brush. Now, one of the frustrating things about this mini is kind of like I was saying, the armor, I want to keep this gray. The problem is Vallejo, they've got to. I know they do. I just don't have it. I don't have a paint that matches this shade of gray. So if I mess anything up, it's gonna be kind of a pain to try to fix. Interesting. So what kind of, I guess, what did you use in the airbrush? Was it like a edible paint, or was it more like a really thin, was it like a dye, or like what did you use? Oh man, do you know what I completely forgot to do? I knew I was forgetting something. I always feel like I'm forgetting something when I start the streaming. I completely forgot to share this on my Discord. So, I'm gonna go ahead and do that really quickly like a professional. Because, you know, nothing says I'm good at streaming like telling people I started my stream 10 minutes into it. So give me 1 second. Come on. I can't type. What is going on? There we go. That's amazing. I cannot believe I completely forgot about that. All right, cool. All right, now that that's done, what's going on, Stormtrooper? How's your day going? Yes, I do. He's the guy that ran y'all's server for Minecraft and, what was it, Space something or other? Oh, cool. That'll be fun. By the way, I think this is kind of more up your alley than what I normally paint, Stormtrooper. It's got a Space Marine Apothecary today. I was talking a little bit about how these guys sound like they'd be great field medics, but in reality, they're basically just there to harvest gene seeds from fallen Space Marines. All right, so we'll let his Talberd dry for now. And then we'll go on to his, oh, Where are you at? There you are at. Go on to his single pauldron, because his pauldron is actually going to be the only thing that we're going to be painting in Space Marine Blue, also known as McCrag Blue, because he is a son of McCrag. So everything else on this miniature is going to be completely white except his pauldron and his talberd. What's going on, Cal? That's probably one of the funniest moments in Family Feud history. Nick Grandma! What? Which question was that? I can't remember. Dude, there are so many details on this Space Marine. It's kind of hard to know where to go next, but we'll go with actually part of the base here, because this guy on the base is actually going to be just an Ultramarine Primaris. Or I should say Ultramarine in Mark IV Primaris armor. So since we've got our blue on our palette, we can go ahead and start base coating him as well. Oh, that's right. I think one of them did finally answer, and it was like Dopey or something like that. That is a loaded question, though. Like, imagine if one of them had said Grumpy. I'd like to know who they got to yeah. That is definitely a loaded question. Like, nobody's gonna answer that. Oh yeah. That was another good one. I'm trying to think of all of my like favorite Family Feud moments, and I can't remember them now off the top of my head. There's a ton of good ones. Or like the Abu was not Abu. Yeah, it was Abu. The guy's first name was Abu, last name was Abu, and his middle name was Abu. It's fan-freaking-tastic. Yeah, exactly. And he even like pulled out his ID and proved it too, which is just fantastic. We're going to go ahead and move to a second coat on this pauldron so we get a nice even coat. Now, just for those of you who are familiar with Warhammer, the actual game and not just the miniatures, you'll know that you play with hundreds of these models. So I'm just gonna come right out and say, I do not spend this much time on most models that I paint. Most of the models I'm spending maybe 20 minutes on, with the exception of any character models. And this being an apothecary is technically a character model per. It does have the character keyword in its data sheet. I believe so. I'd have to go back and look. Well, wait, I have his data sheet right here, don't I? Nope, it doesn't say. The data sheet that come with these little inserts are terrible. No, I did not. I do know that there's a first-person shooter called Space Marine coming out pretty soon. It'll be the second one that they've released. Try not to hit any of this gray with this red. One of the things we're going to do with this is we're just going to keep, very similar to what we normally do with a lot of our cloth, is we're just going to keep working this up until we get a nice dark shadow, some decent highlights going. Also, it felt kind of appropriate to be using, instead of my normal 3D printed handle, I'm using the Citadel Games Workshop handle because it just feels more appropriate. Although this is probably my favorite painting handle for smaller miniatures. Okay. Is it a tabletop or is it a video game? Because I know they're about ready to also drop the Horus Heresy in plastic, whereas it used to be resin printed only, and it was rather expensive. And again, everyone who is not a 40K fan is probably thinking, is like, what the heck are they talking about? So, in Warhammer 40K lore, the Imperium of Man was kind of led by a guy named the Emperor. And at one point, he's kind of like the creator of the Primarchs. And the Primarchs are essentially the leaders of each chapter of Space Marines. Well, at one point in their history, one of the Primarchs, whose name was Horus, rebelled against the Emperor and all of his brothers and kind of fell into league with, I think it was the Chaos God of War. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And it was an event known as the Horus Heresy, and led to the death of the Emperor, or not the death, kind of the death of the Emperor. It's complicated, because technically the Emperor's not dead. He's being kept alive by people killing psychers and essentially feeding their life essence to him. But you know, that's the grim dark. 40,000 years in the future, are the person everybody worships as a god is literally being kept alive by killing essentially magicians. who are using this power from a place called the Warp to cast spells. Yeah, they were. And then after the Horus Heresy, they were limited to only 1,000. The only exception was if they are in a crusade. And so you have had some chapters who just said, fine, we'll just always be on a crusade. And then you had some chapters to be like, oh, no. We don't have over 1,000 Space Marines. We just have a bunch of sub-chapters who all answer to one Primarch in one order. But we don't talk about that. Continue to push up our highlight on this. I think I said halberd, but this is definitely not a polearm. I think what I mean is it talberd? What is it? I'm having a brain fart right now of what these freaking things are called. Tabard, thank you. Jeez. Oh man, I don't know where my brain was at with that one. It was thinking on the worship of the Emperor, evidently. Exactly. Pretty much, yeah. Pretty sure my brain was not present for that little escapade. Yeah, I'm getting red all over the white parts on this model, so probably what I'll do before Wednesday is stop by my local game shop and see if I can't find the actual color that this primer is used on, instead of trying to mix and match my own colors, because that will inevitably lead to not great not great results. Alright, so you know what? I'm not going to use this brush. I'm going to use a smaller brush because we're coming down to our last highlight on the tabard. There we go. But I can just imagine. So my dad, y'all seen him in here. He's a fire. His username is Firefighter, but in IRL he is a firefighter and a paramedic. Can you imagine if his job was similar to that of an apothecary from Warhammer 40k, where his job was basically just, okay, well, this guy's dead. Let me just grab what makes him special so that we can place it into something else and not worry about the person who actually just died. Because that's intense. Hey, Mom, how's it going? How was your day been? We're painting the Space Marine. Oh, it wasn't terrible. Have some new hires kind of having their first like full on their own day at work. It went pretty well. So I'm kind of happy about that. Because that makes my life significantly easier. Alright, and then we're going for our pure red tone for our most intense highlight here. Just for these edge highlights here, just so we can kind of bring out some of this detail here. Yeah, everything is a mess right up here, but we'll get to that in just a second. Try to start cleaning some of that up. I think that halberd looks, again, I said halberd. It is definitely a tabard. Whatever. I think it's looking pretty good. But there is a spot on the back where I just need to add another coat just to make sure that we're all nice and opaque in our opacity. There we go. Yeah, I know what a halberd is. I don't know why I keep confusing the two. All right, cool. So while our Space Marine down here also dries, so we can finish kind of cleaning up some of those layers, go ahead and start on some of these details across his uniform here. So we've got a couple of these holsters. In the box art, quote unquote box art, they have them as black, but I always prefer them to be kind of a leather brown instead. Yeah, it's called a Space Marine Apothecary, so it's used in the tabletop war game Warhammer 40k. So essentially, apothecaries are kind of like field medics. And so they either heal you, but if you're beyond healing, they take what's known as a gene seed from you, which allows them to take that and actually make more Space Marines. So Space Marines are these like genetically altered super soldiers in power armor. And they fight against things like orcs and like these skeleton robot thingies that are called gosh, what are they called, Steve? Stormtrooper. Right, that too. I actually have 4 dreadnoughts. I've got 2 of the original like Mark III dreadnoughts, and I've got a couple of Redemptor dreadnoughts that I just built and painted out. But yeah, my new list has 3 Redemptor dreadnoughts. Let's see, what is it? 4 Redemptor dreadnoughts, an Incursor squad, an Eradicator squad, 2 Primaris Intercessor squads, 2 captains, Chief Librarian Tigarius, and a bunch of others that I can't think of off the top of my head. A lot of stuff. All right, so for his holsters, I'm going to do a similar process to what I just did with the tabard. Yeah, Necrons is what Necrons were what I was thinking about, but you also forgot the wow, I am blanking on everything. The space bugs. Tyranids. Tyranids, that's who they are. Yep. And I'm promise you, I'm not lying when I say this, but I remembered it just before you posted that in chat. I mean, technically they are a part of the Xenos, because Xenos are pretty much anything that's just not human. Pretty sure the Imperium of Man literally embodies the term xenomorphic. Or xenomorphic. Not xenomorphic. Xenophobic. Pretty much if you're not human, you don't deserve to live. And then you've got the orcs who are just like, war is fun, so we go to war and kill things. You've got the Necrons, who are essentially nothing in this universe deserves to live but us. You have the Tyranids, who are just like consuming everything. You have the Tau, who are basically like, we are going to fight for the good of the Tau and nobody else. And the only reason they're involved with the Space Marines, or not involved with the Space Marines, fighting the Space Marines because the Space Marines fought them first. You've got the... Yeah, exactly. You've got the... Not the Tau. And they're not called elves. They're... the Eldar, who are literally just space elves, but they're called the Eldar. The Eldar are like... I don't really know their motivation. Like, the Dark Eldar just serves Slaanesh, who's one of the gods of chaos. So that makes sense. Their motivation makes sense. But I don't know about the regular Eldar. Alright, so let's grab some black here. Because there's actually quite a bit of this model that's going to be just pure black. Or at least mostly black. For instance, his bolter pistol here, which I think is a special issue bolter pistol, it looks like. So probably a Mastercraft or something like that. So in the game, you have several different weapon options that you can apply to your models. And they affect how your units fight in the actual game itself. And a master-crafted weapon gives you specific bonuses that you can glean from. I can't remember exactly what they are for a Mastercraft bolt or pistol. Again, I keep forgetting I have the data sheet on the back of this thing. And once again, it doesn't actually give me the specifics of the weapons, which is kind of annoying. Whatever. I swear. So some of the data sheets that come with the models that you build are really informative. Some of them are just terrible. This happens to be one of those that are just terrible. Well, there goes me ever having a hope of a, yeah, pretty much, Games Workshop deal, having ever talked about them ever. I love Games Workshop's models. I love the game, but the company is just, some of the decisions they make are just terrible. And I mean on the corporate level. Like there's some not too long ago there was like a leak of the like non-disclosure agreement that you have to sign if you get sponsored by Games Workshop so you can get like early access to models and things like that. And my goodness, it was stuff like you can't say anything negative about Games Workshop. You can't give a bad negative review of any of the models that you're given to you, and like even to the point where it was like you can't actually tell anybody that you had to sign this non-disclosure agreement. And somebody leaked it, and like people were in an outrage over it. Like a lot of content creators who were working with Games Workshop in one way or another. In fact, they lost a lot of people who just wanted to be honest about Games Workshop and their products, because a lot of them are really, really good. Some of them are just terrible. And so if you ever see somebody who is reviewing a new or an exclusive or like a preview of an upcoming model, just keep in mind that they literally can't say anything negative about it. If it was given to them by Games Workshop, that is. All right, so I'm gonna switch to my smaller brush. We're gonna start in with some of these little straps that are holding up these gene seed bottles. I guess that's what they are. I'm not really sure what they are. Be really careful not to paint over any of our current our work earlier, because like we've talked about before, darker colors are always easier to cover lighter colors. So in this case, we're painting black, which is the darkest of colors. So if we get any of that on the bits that we painted previously, it's going to be a lot harder to kind of clean that up. So it's going well so far. Get a little bit of water out of that brush. I'm using, when I'm doing details like this that are kind of not risen but like raised detail, I often use the side of my brush just to make sure that I'm not, like, if my hand starts shaking or whatever, that I'm not hitting any of the parts that I've already painted. But inevitably, I will need to use the tip of my brush and pray that I do not get anything on stuff I've already painted. Now, you may be asking yourself, or me, like, why didn't you just paint that to begin with? Like, well, believe it or not, it's a lot easier to not paint over what I've already painted when doing these tiny details than the other way around. At least for me. Might be different for other people. Comes down to whatever works for you. No, I did not 3D print this. This is a purchased model from my local Games Workshop store. That's one of those Games Workshop things that's actually really annoying, is they do not allow anybody to 3D print their models. So they actively have, like, I guess a fraud department, I guess you'd call it, that goes out and will remove any kind of models that are too close to their own, which is fair, right? You do want to protect your intellectual property, but you know, it's games. Warhammer 40K has a massive barrier to entry, and that is a financial barrier to entry. I was very fortunate in that a friend of ours who is on our paintball team gave me a bunch of models to kind of start and get into the hobby with. But like, you know, if I didn't have that, I would have probably never gone into 40K at all. Because in order to just start the game, to get a starting army of around 1,000 points, which is not much. Normally, you're looking at 2,000 points for a standard game of 40K. You're looking at least $300 to $400, which is insane. I haven't come near to that, not even close, with my army, because 90% of it was gifted to me. So it's like, it's kind of frustrating for me as somebody who does 3D print that I can't that I couldn't 3D print my own army to just to start with, you know. Oh, look, it is very common for people to have not just a single army, but multiple armies in their collection. So I'm guessing Henry Cavill probably has, you know, probably close to $5,000–6,000 invested in his models at the moment. Yeah, exactly. All right, so just kind of trying to figure out where I want to go next with this model, because we're getting close to a point where we want to move on to the next bit, and I'm just trying to figure out, where do I want to go. Probably keep working on the front for now, because I do have all these purity seals, things like that. Which the purity seals are these, like, they look like wax seals with a piece of paper coming off of them. They're really easy to do, and I've done a million of them. Not really, but I've done quite a few with my current army. But yeah, I would love to play a game with Henry Cavill. I mean, obviously, like, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one to say that, but that'd be an experience of a lifetime, to play with not only somebody who is a very well, you know, established actor, but also somebody who is a massive nerd. And somebody that, like, you wouldn't really, I think that's why he got so, like, famous for being a nerd, is like, he doesn't strike you as the person who would be like a massive gamer or somebody who PC games or something like that. He doesn't really strike you as the nerdy type. He almost reminds you more of the jock type, which is really cool that he is a huge nerd. And the fact that he literally, like, he played the Witcher games and read the books before he was ever offered the part, which is just super cool. I mean, for me, there's like, obviously there's your standard man crush, right? Which is definitely Ryan Reynolds. But Henry Cavill is definitely the other. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and start on some of these dingly-danglies around his neck. First, let's go ahead and do a second coat on some of these lanyard thingies. Yeah, that one unfortunately is not going to be let through calico, but yes. See, when the auto mod kicks in, I already know it's going to be something Calico has said. Oh my gosh. What am I gonna do? Probably just let the auto mod do its thing. Ugh. Man, I am not being as careful as I really wanted to be on this, but it's alright. I mean, I could if I wanted to. I could turn the auto mod back onto like really strict. So I am using a bunch of different paints. So for the reds, I'm using a combination of where are you at? Vallejo Black Gray mixed with where are you at? Reaper's Violet Red. For my blue, I'm just using Citadel's Macragge Blue, and then black, I'm just using Vallejo Black. Oh yeah, the brown is Reaper's Earth Brown mixed with Vallejo Black Gray. Also, welcome to the chat. Thanks for dropping by. We're just in the beginning stages of this Ultramarine Apothecary. Yeah, I've heard other people say that. I've, at least with their MSP line, I've never had an issue with them. I've had a couple come out a little bit thinner than the rest of them, but honestly, like, you know, they come out with what I would normally use for my layer, you know, thickness anyway. So I've never had a huge problem with them, but I have heard people say that before. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the purity seal, or the actual like prayer parts. And for those, I use kind of a trifecta, I guess you could say. I use Xandri, Dust, Ishtabi Bone, and Pallid Witch Flesh. So our base is going to be Xandri Dust, and we're going to work our way up to Pallid Witch Flesh. I mean, that is very true. That is literally what we've been talking about this whole time. I mean, in the realm of Warhammer, list another celebrity that's even more, like, impressive than having Henry Cavill in our fandom. Yep. Yeah, I kind of like this trait. I've always used it a lot. Or I've always used it a lot. That sentence was dumb. This is what I've always used, and I've always really liked the way that it turned out. I used to use a different combination, not of GW paints. I used to use Army Painter's Skeleton Bone, and then I would work my way up to Reaper Polished Bone, and I would just do like my own mixes. And I stopped by my local GW store, picked out this triad, and it's been honestly something I've always really liked. So for sure. And then of course, just, you know, the fact that we finally have like somebody on that scale, I guess you could say, coming out and saying, yeah, I play Warhammer, is gonna grow the hobby quite a bit. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to start painting in this Apothecary symbol. I'm just using the same red color that I'm using for my purity seals. Dude, my mouth does not want to work with me tonight. I have been stuttering and stumbling over my words all evening, and I do not know why. Not even all evening, even at work. It was bad. See, in which accent though? Because he does a very convincing American accent with Superman. And then like his gravelly accent that he does with again, my words, they're gone. My brain is betraying me. Yeah, the Witcher one. But either way, I feel like Henry Cavill, at least everything that I've seen of him and heard about him, is that he's also a very genuine person. So like, that's so rare with celebrities, especially when they talk about their own hobbies. You know, a lot of the times they talk about their hobbies like it's just a way to get more publicity. But I feel like with him, it's a lot different. He actually enjoys playing video games. He actually enjoys playing Warhammer. So I think that's also another reason why nerds, including myself, love him. They are for normal people, but I guess my point is like normal people don't ever get exposed to stuff like that, and for him to kind of come in and take it to a platform where people will actually notice it and maybe even get into the hobby a little bit more. That's the part that I love about it. So I'm going to mix those two together to get a nice kind of middle of the road thing. I'm just going to start painting. Good grief. Painting all of the surfaces that are facing towards my light source. And my light source, I'm imagining, is coming from the top down because I'm basic. At least in my army painting, I'm basic because I don't want to get super fancy with my army. I do get a little bit fancy with my characters, but not with my rank and file Space Marines. Yeah, and that's kind of, I guess, what I'm alluding to is that hobbies like this or like PC gaming and stuff like that, yeah, there is some normalization to it, but he's making it look cool, which means that like people, there'll obviously always be people who, you know, don't get into hobbies like this, which is fine, but bringing it to that big of a platform means that more people will be exposed to it and hopefully join the hobby. Or you can be like Stormtrooper and just be kind of adjacent to the hobby but never actually join the hobby. Oh, that's awesome, dude. So the Brush Wielders Union, it is a kind of a group of people who push each other to get better and better at painting. There's a Discord page where we all kind of hang out and get to, you know, just be painters together, be in the hobby. I really liked it because I feel like it's one of the most wholesome places I've been at. You know, even if you get criticism on your work, it's always very constructive. And I've benefited a lot from being a part of it, but it's like a Patreon. You get like certain benefits from being in it, like you get discounts on paint from certain places and certain companies, and just it's all around a fun time. I have no idea if that explanation actually did anything, but where is it at? I know I've got my... Here it is. Membership booklet. So there's like this little pledge in the front, which basically says that I'm gonna do my best to clear your backlog, paint all your miniatures, and that you will welcome new people. You're not gonna be a jerk. You're not gonna gatekeep or anything like that, and it's super beneficial. I definitely agree. Like if I didn't find satisfaction in destroying other people's armies, I've never done it. I'm just gonna throw it out there that I've won a single game of Warhammer 40K. But yes, I agree with you. If it wasn't so therapeutic to kind of paint, GW probably would not have much going for them. Honestly, the whole reason that I got into Warhammer was because of people who painted Warhammer. It just felt like everyone in the hobby painted Warhammer, and so like I kind of got into Warhammer because of the painting hobby versus the other way around. I got into the painting hobby because I wanted to paint miniatures for my D&D game. I can always pick them up when we're in July because it's not too far away. You know, one thing I would like to start getting to, like, I've done some non-metallic metal on stream along with some OSL, but I really, really, really want to get a good gold, non-metallic metal gold recipe. Because right now I'm just using the Reaper Triad, which works okay, but to me it doesn't look exactly like I want it to. And there we go. That's looking decent. Got a little bit of paint on our seals here, so I'm just gonna repair that. Yeah, whatever you feel like, dude. If you want to mail them, you can mail them. If you want to wait, you can wait. It's all up to you. Alright, so I think a lot of what I have to do next, except for his head, is going to require me to do metallics first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do his face, and then I'm going to do all of the leather on his uniform, and then I'll move on to metallics. Metallics are probably going to be the last thing that I do, mostly because I hate doing them. Oh, there you are. It's a lot more brown than I thought I was going to use, but you know, we'll go with it. Well, we're going to start edge highlighting the holster and all the leathers here that I've painted up. I might want to lighten it up a little bit, but use this kind of as my first highlight, and then do a secondary brighter highlight. Here. So what I'll do is I'll come back with some of the Pallid Witch Flesh, because like we talked about last time, if you add white to a color, it doesn't actually lighten it, it desaturates it more than anything else. So I want to use a color that will still maintain the brown kind of color, so I want to use more of a beige than I do a white. Pallid Witch Flesh does a good job of that. I kind of made a decision with this miniature too that I'm going to so regret halfway through this, and that is I do want to make the Space Marine on the ground actually look like a Space Marine and do all the edge highlighting and fancy stuff with that too. Oh, that's gonna be a pain. But you know what? Kind of here for it. All right, so let's go ahead and finish up the little signature thing on his arm. Not signature, whatever you call this thing. I'm done for tonight, man. As far as, like, my brain just does not want to function with me today. I mean, it doesn't normally, but now even more than ever. This is gonna go on YouTube, and people are gonna be like, "Man, this guy can't talk. What is wrong with him? Why is he streaming?" I don't know. That's the answer to that question. I have no clue. Yeah. I would agree with that to an extent, but I like to push myself in certain aspects. So for instance, like the Space Marine on the ground, it's going to be a good learning process. So even though I don't like to force myself to do certain things, I'm going to anyway. Just so that I can learn more than I avoid, I guess you could say. All right, let's go to his face. So my normal recipe for face is kind of complex, ish. All right, so what I normally do is I have Army Painter's Tan Flesh, Reaper's Rosy Shadow, Army Painter's Barbarian Flesh, and then Fair Shadow. And these 4 paints are usually what I use. I'll use a little bit of red for the tan flesh as my base coat to kind of give it a deeper shade color. And that will be my initial base coat. This is giving me absolutely fantastic. Whoa! It happened again, but thankfully we only got a little bit of paint on the edge of the base, so we're saved. So Calico can't make fun of me for ruining another miniature. At least not yet. The night is still young, and we've already dropped it once so far. Nope, I don't. If I do, it'll be recess shading only. I've kind of moved away from using washes for the most part. Mostly because I want to get better at shading and highlighting manually. At least that was my initial reason. It was something that I had seen on a Squidmar video when I first started painting. I was like, well, I can't do that now. But I eventually decided, you know what? Let's go ahead and try it out and see what happens. And so I've not really looked back, and I've like my painting overall has gone so much better. I'll use washes on like metallics and in recesses, but like as far as like on skin and things like that, I've pretty much completely moved away from washes. There's nothing wrong with using washes. It's just kind of a personal decision that I made a while ago to try to force myself to get better. And it worked. So for those who don't know, Squidmar is a pretty well-known figure in the miniature painting world. He does a lot of like tutorial videos and things like that. And he basically said at one point he just quit using washes altogether. I still use them, like I mentioned, on occasion, but only in certain areas of my painting. Yeah, absolutely. Like there's absolutely no problem using a shade. Like I said, I still use them a lot. It's just when I'm doing more of my, like, if I'm making like a character, or if I'm painting like you know, a display miniature or something like that, I will typically do everything by hand. If I'm doing something like for my D&D tabletop, it depends. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. It just depends on what kind of miniature it is. Like if I'm painting a miniature that I'm going to be using as scatter, like as an opponent for my players, then no, I will definitely not do everything manually, and I will definitely 100% use a wash. But if I'm painting a miniature for my personal character, yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing everything manually. It just depends on what you want. Yeah, the Skeleton Pirate was fun to paint. I think I actually I may have posted that one in the Union Discord. I don't remember. The only part I don't like about doing faces is when I'm streaming, because my friggin' head tends to get in the way. Or I tend to like draw it in close, and so it's off camera. Alright, so we're going to move to Rosy Shadow, which is going to be my mid-tone. Or, no, I'm sorry, no, that's not going to be my mid-tone. Which do I can't ever remember which I use for my mid-tone, if it's Barbarian Flesh or if it's... No, Barbarian Flesh I use for my highlights. Okay. So I'll take a little bit of this, add a little bit of that Rosy Shadow just to brighten it up a little bit, and then that'll be our mid-tone. What's going on, Liam? How you doing today, man? It's good to see you here, as always. Looking good so far, I think. Although the side of his head's got this kind of funky thing going on with his temple and his cheek. Might just throw a wash in there. See if I can't smooth out that transition a bit, but we'll do that later. Next, we'll go ahead and move on to our highlight, which is this Barbarian Flesh tone by Army Painter. Nice. So it's always a bonus whenever you IRL actually roll a nat 20, which for me is super rare. Especially on like my performance checks. Not a word, Calico. I can already hear the wheels turning in her head. Depends on what I'm trying to do with that performance check. I'm going to go ahead and create a bit of a glaze here to see if I can't smooth out some of these transitions a little bit better. Some of them I want to keep a little bit more sharp and harsh. A lot of them I want to kind of make them look a little bit less contrasty and a little bit more smooth. All right, cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this Pallid Witch Flesh, mixed in with a little bit of my Barbarian Flesh Tone to get me my final full-on highlight. And I'm just going to use this really strategically on things like the top of the nose, on the tops of the cheekbones, just to start getting my highlight, my brightest highlights there. And so much for trying not to hit the gray. I have done messed that up a while ago now. All right, now the really fun part, trying to do the eyes. With him, I don't think I'm going to do anything really fancy. I'm probably just going to give him white eyes. Not bother with anything like pupils or irises. There we go. Still has a lot of character. I don't know how well y'all can see that, but... Go ahead and do some smaller highlights on certain parts of his face. They're really visible. Just kind of give it a little bit more character going on. There we go. Cool. All right. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. He's actually holding a gene seed. So we'll go ahead and start base coating that. We'll just base coat in red for now and work our way up to kind of a pinkish red. I'll actually kind of get to demonstrate what I mean whenever I say that. white desaturates more than it lightens or brightens. But you'll notice that the more white I add, that I'm going to be adding to this red, you'll see that it doesn't become light red, it becomes, or bright red, it becomes just kind of a pastel pink. Yeah, it's not one of the worst models I've ever seen as far as that goes, Calico. It's more of like, I don't really feel comfortable painting it right now. I might in the future. But that's it. It's not necessarily that I'm like, oh yeah, it's a completely inappropriate model. It's more of, I'm not completely comfortable with painting it just yet. If I'm not comfortable painting it, then I'm not going to do a very good job actually painting it. So I just want to give it a little bit before I even consider it at this point. There we go. So kind of got these little tentacles coming off of this thing. Not exactly sure what they are, but I feel like they should be red. At least for right now. I swear, North Carolina needs to make up its mind. Because it has been like flipping back and forth from like stupid hot to like really, really cold. And like, I've been having to turn my heat and AC on and off constantly. The only reason I say that is because it is almost unbearably warm in my room right now, or my office, I guess you say. So I might have to go turn on some AC or open a door or something, because it is not comfortable in here right now. There. Looking pretty good so far. Liam, you had to ask him. You had to ask him. I could have told you why he doesn't play. Because he was in my group for a while. Yep, exactly. So essentially what happened was I was DMing Wild Beyond the Witchlight with him, my sister, a mutual friend of ours, and who else was in that? I can't remember exactly who all was in it, but my schedule changed, and I wasn't able to I wasn't actually able to DM on the same night as I used to. And so I was like, okay, well, can anybody do Saturday? And people were like, yeah, we can do Saturday. And I'm like, all right, cool. What time Saturday? And then nobody ever responded back. Well, I say that a couple people responded back, but like when it came down to actually play, I got crickets. That too. But unfortunately, it was the only day that I could really DM anymore, unfortunately. Which means that basically what would have happened was some people would have been able to play, but other people would have to leave, no matter what day that we did it on. So it was kind of a lose-lose situation. But, you know, it happens, unfortunately. Life gets in the way, schedules change, things happen. Yep. Name was Erstin, right? And it kind of sucks too, because we kind of ended that campaign right when I started using Foundry, which anybody who plays in the TOI campaign can tell you, like, it is a baller tool and you can do some really cool stuff with it. I wouldn't mind retrying another campaign with that same group, but we'd have to figure out a better day. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab some more McCrag Blue, because I want to do a little bit more work on the Space Marine that he's actually working on. Grab a bigger brush here. There's still a couple areas where the paint is a little bit patchy and clumpy. So I just want to fix that up real quick. Do you know what I haven't seen on stream in a while? Stormtrooper? Wait. Oh, really? That's gonna be fun. I was gonna play a one-shot with him a while ago. I don't know, it just never kind of came to fruition. I really wanted to play. No, you know what? Let's use this. Okay. Well, to be fair, you were the main DPS because some of us didn't know the rules. Or no, I'm actually thinking, I'm thinking of the wrong campaign. I was thinking of the Curse of Strahd campaign. When that DM forgot the fact that you can't actually, yeah, where you can't actually cast 2 leveled spells in one turn. And so he was casting friggin' Spiritual Weapon as a bonus action, and then Inflict Wounds as his action, which is just stupid. Like, it is so unbalanced, man. Like, it was crazy. But yeah, that was one of those campaigns I kind of wish stopped, because I really enjoyed playing my character. But unfortunately, the DM had to stop playing because he was a teacher, and he just didn't have the time to spend with his job and with D&D. So we had another friend who was going to take over, but unfortunately he ended up falling through as well. So the campaign just kind of came to an end and fell apart. I've had a lot of online campaigns fall apart. I haven't had any in-person games fall apart just yet. Because I think more people put more effort and time into in-person games, and so they're less willing to let it go. Okay. Well, everything else... Oh, nope. I stand corrected. I was about to say everything else on here is metallic, which I want to do the metallics on Wednesday, but there is still one more thing I can do. There's a skull on the back of his head. Where is my... A pygmy goblin. I don't know what to make of that. So I'm just not going to say anything, and I'll let Calico say whatever she wants to say. Dude, I cannot find the paint I want. Where is it? That's unfortunate. Oh well, I'll just use the paint I've got right now. So I'm going to paint this little skull that he's got strapped to his back here. Start with kind of the same colors that we had with everything else that we were using. But in this case, this is going to be one of the cases where I do actually want to use a wash on this little skull. Just so that I can differentiate it between, or from the colors that in tones that we're using for our parchment and the skull. So I'm going to use and highlight using the same colors that I did with all these purity seals, but I'll apply a wash of Agrax Earthshade to it to kind of darken it up a bit. Speaking of Agrax Earthshade, I don't know why this reminded me of that, but I'm going to go ahead and do my final edge highlight for my holsters. Like that. Just enough to kind of give it a little bit of definition around the holster itself. And I will probably apply a wash to this as well. Mostly because I'm feeling a bit lazy. And then once I'm done all of the leather and metallics and stuff like that on Wednesday, I'll also do my cleanup and all of the highlighting that I'm going to do on his armor. Okay. Now he's got these, it's got an actual name, but there are these little like vent thingies. They're just going to be dark. I almost said dark black. Black is just dark. Take the DM off with what? with what Cal is saying, or with destroying the hag without any weapons? I wasn't mad or ticked off. I was impressed, honestly. Like, there was no point in that game where I was like, oh, I can't believe y'all did that. Y'all suck. No, I was like, holy cow, I cannot believe you guys did that. You guys killed one of the main bosses at level 4, I think it was, with no weapons, and like y'all hadn't gotten a long rest, so like very few spell slots too. It was just impressive. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was like the perfect storm because she rolled terribly. So it was like a perfect storm of y'all getting really good rolls and her getting really bad rolls, and then just creative use of cantrips. And ironically, I will say this, since we're not in that group anymore, I can kind of feel free to say this. Y'all completely forgot about the rules of Prismere. Like, none of y'all, it seemed like y'all were like, oh, these hags are just going to kill us. You've completely forgot the fact that there are rules in Prismere governing what the hags can and can't do. Which I found hilarious. Alright, so I'm not going to be doing any non-metallic metal on this guy because this guy's going to be a practical mini, not a display miniature. So I think we'll go ahead and do some of... Well, we'll highlight the skull for next, and then we'll do some washes, and then I think we'll be done for now. Yeah, y'all did, and it was kind of annoying. And it was kind of like the epitome of, but it's what my character would do, too. Like, he would kill somebody, and he's like, but that's what my character would do. He hates these people. And I'm like, well, you know you got other players in the group, right? Like, yes, that may be what your character would do, but let's think about the rest of the party as well. So let's not attack a hag when you literally have no weapons on you. Thankfully, it turned out well, but that was not a situation where you want to just start killing something. Alright, so I'm going to take some of this Agrax Earthshade. Start slathering it on the leather bits. See, it just makes some of those details pop a little bit better. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to re-highlight, since we're darkening it up quite a bit more than it was, by applying this wash. And then we'll add a little bit of this to the skull as well. Making sure that we don't let it pool in all the wrong areas. Again, that's really the, I know I said this last time, I repeat myself a lot. But the biggest thing to remember about things like washes is it's not about, it's really the biggest thing to remember with washes is where do I want it to pull and where I don't want it to pull, and kind of making sure that we apply it correctly, and because if you let it pool pretty much anywhere, you can end up with something that doesn't look really like shadow or shade, just kind of looks gloopy. But with the same token, if you don't let it pool in anywhere, it basically does nothing. I have way too much water on my brush right now. There. All right, so I think a lot of what I have to do next is going to be metallic or metallic based. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to re-highlight some of the edges on these holsters just to bring back out the edge highlights. Just to make them a little bit more noticeable here. Not only noticeable, but it'll also help me give me a better contrast between light and dark, which makes them look a little bit better. Because remember, yeah, that is true. His character died to a gelatinous cylinder. Not a gelatinous cube, gelatinous cylinder. Which is basically just a gelatinous cube, but in cylinder form. Cool, 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 cool. I like the way this is looking so far. There we go. Awesome. All right. Well, I think we did. I should just give. Yeah, I can't even say give up on speaking right. Yep, in cylinder, well, cylinder form, shape, same thing. It was essentially stuck down a well, and they, yeah, did what the second time? So, like I said, I think everything that I have to do, okay. Everything that I have to do next is going to be require some metallic paints. So I think we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight and come back to this on Wednesday. So a bit of a shorter stream tonight. So we're just under 2 hours. Normally I like to go 2.5 to 3. But there's a couple reasons why I'm waiting to Wednesday. First and foremost, I'm getting some new brushes. So whenever I use metallic paint, I only use synthetic brushes, and all of my synthetic brushes are pretty much worn out. So I have some new ones on order, and they'll be here Wednesday. So that's the main reason. Second reason is I just don't feel like it tonight, which is I think the more important reason. So we'll go ahead and call it tonight. Thank you all, as usual. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys coming out and watching the stream. Everybody who is a repeat offender, you guys are the best. I really appreciate all of your support in coming out, just hanging out, painting some awesome miniatures. So I hope all of you have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you here on Wednesday. Night, everyone.